It is, at least for the moment, weather pending. It is Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban week. It is Ole Miss, Alabama week. And so, over the course of the offseason, when we didn't know if we were going to have a football season, but we were still having shows, what did we do? Well, I asked you guys, what do you want to talk about? And you guys said, we love stories, man. We want to tell us some stories. What's it like on the road? What's this stadium like? What's that coach like? And so I started the All Access series, brilliantly named. We focus group that one. And I told some Lane Kiffin stories. Those did really good numbers. So I figured if we get a chance, and something tells me we will during the season, I'm going to share more Lane Kiffin stories. It's that time. We're going to share more Lane Kiffin stories here. There's a new audience, so I think a lot of you probably didn't even hear it the first go around. So I'm going to kind of revisit briefly part of the story that I've already told. I'm going to expand on it though. So if you went to, I think it was ESPN.com today, I think Mark Schlabach, he kind of did a timeline of Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban, and it jogged some old memories in my mind. So Schlabach, for example, was talking about how Lane Kiffin was notoriously non-punctual, missed buses all the time, and that it just goes up Nick Saban's backside sideways because he preaches that stuff to his players. You can't be letting a coordinator get away with it if you're not going to let his freshman right guard get away with it. So, as Mark Schlabach chronicled on ESPN.com today, pretty well known, Lane Kiffin got left after the national title game back in 2015. This was a game I was at. It was out in Glendale, Arizona. Bama beats Clemson, and afterwards, a number of us were around the Alabama locker room. And Kiffin's just talking to people. Typically, the assistants don't get to talk to the media at Alabama, but in the postseason, they can't control that. And so you have to let your players and your assistants talk to the media. So Kiffin loved it. He would have stayed there all night, and he did. And he got left. The team left him. The buses went to the hotel. They left him. He had to take an Uber or something. He had to get a ride to the hotel. I saw that. That didn't stand out all that much. That's just Lane Kiffin, right? So I remember seeing that. The next year, they go to the SEC championship game. They win that. I'm about to revisit that in a second. They go to the playoff. They're going to play Washington. They have these media availability days, media days before those games, and it was in Atlantis at the Peach Bowl, so we're up there again. Kiffin got left again. The buses took the team back to the hotel again, and Kiffin got left behind yet again. And he kind of made a joke about it. I think you'll be surprised to find out Nick Saban didn't really find it all that funny. So, earlier that year, and we're going to lead up to the SEC championship game because that's where things really got fun behind the scenes, but earlier that year, and really just the past 3 years, 2014, 15, and 16, there were famous shots on the sideline at Alabama games of Kiffin getting his head chewed off. I only halfway say that figuratively. I mean, Nick Saban jumped down his throat. The great part for Saban was he was essentially running a halfway house for coaches. And so Kiffin couldn't talk back. It was yes or no, sir, yes or no, sir. Because the only path that Kiffin had to ever being a head coach again was through Nick Saban. Do you know what a bad character reference from Nick Saban will do for you? And so Lane Kiffin had to mind his P's and Q's, so he took them, chewing after chewing after chewing. Well, one particular chewing I was privy to. The Texas A&M Alabama game in 2016. It was in Tuscaloosa. Bama won 33-16 or something like that. I am no more than 15 feet away from them. So Alabama, I think, is in the red zone. So they're right down at the very edge of the coach's box, and I'm standing right next to him. And Kiffin's there calling plays, and I don't know, it was probably 3rd and 1, so I think he went 5 wide or something like that, as he tended to do down at the goal line. And so Nick Saban, not fond of that. He was recruited powerful offensive linemen and running backs forever, and he doesn't do it so they can go 5 wide on 3rd and 1. And so Kiffin does it because that's who Lane Kiffin is. And here comes Nick Saban. And I say, oh, I'm going to get to hear this. Yeah, I did. Bama's on offense. There is no crowd noise. I could hear everything. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I've seen Eminem music videos. I watched WWF in the Attitude Era. Never a single Monday night did Stone Cold Steve Austin talk to Vince McMahon in half the manner that Nick Saban talked to Lane Kiffin. It took the English language and it bent it in such a way that I've never heard it bent before or since. I've never witnessed a grown man talk to another grown man like that. It was as if Lane Kiffin was a 5-year-old child, and he just stood there and took it and took it and took it and called the next play. I cannot overstate how incredulous I was. You've seen the meme where the monkey just kind of looks out of the side of his eyes? I didn't want Saban to even see me over there, so I just kind of I just kind of looked out of the corner of my eyes, and if you would have had footage of me, I would be a GIF today, because that was me. I was the sideways looking monkey. So with that in mind, as the season progresses, remember what happened. Lane Kiffin in Alabama, they're putting up really good numbers. They're on their way to going to another national title. More on that in a second, as if you don't know how it turns out. So Lane Kiffin's in demand. He's been 3 years, so he's paid his penance to society, the College Football Society at least, and Houston's got a job opening. Orgeron's going to have an offensive coordinator opening. There's several other jobs that look like they're coming open. So Jimmy Sexton is working the phones, and he's he's Saban's agent, he's Kiffin's agent, he's everyone's agent behind the scenes. And so Kiffin's in demand. Alabama's marching towards the SEC championship game. Kiffin, I can't remember if he announced it or not, but he said, he let it be known, I'm not going to entertain any offers until after the SEC championship game. So there we are in Atlanta. I'm on the field for this one. It's Florida versus Alabama. Alabama ends up winning pretty comfortably, as you tend to do against Jim McElwain's Florida Gators. True to his word, Lane Kiffin apparently has not taken a phone call until after the SEC championship game. But let me tell you how literal that was. So after the game, trophy presentation is still going on. Players are still on the field. Lane Kiffin walks past me, and I say, it's probably in my best interest to follow him. Let me just see what's going to happen. I walk behind Kiffin down the tunnel. Jimmy Sexton is waiting there. His agent, Jimmy Sexton, has a phone in his hand with his hand over the speaker. I'm not making this up. I'm about to show you a picture of it for verification in a second. And he hands Kiffin the phone. Kiffin has walked off the turf there at the Georgia Dome, rest in peace Georgia Dome, no more than 15 seconds ago. He is on the phone. Can't tell you who was on the phone, can't tell you who was on the other end, but that is the time between the SEC title game and him taking that call. Colin, do we have that picture? I rummaged through Twitter today, and I went all the way back to 2016, and I found it. There it is. That's outside the locker room. That's on down the tunnel a little ways in the since destroyed Georgia Dome. I don't think a lot of you guys have ever seen Jimmy Sexton. He is very rarely seen. Well, that's him right there. And that's Lane Kiffin on the phone, right outside the Alabama locker room. The rest of the team has not even come down the tunnel yet. So, let me tell you how awkward this got. I told you, Sexton is Lane Kiffin's agent. He also represents Nick Saban. Saban comes down the tunnel a little ways later and walks by both of them. He has to walk by them to get in the locker room. Walks by them as if he's never even seen them before. As awkward as I don't know what. Walks back by them to go to the press room. Comes back by them again after the press room and never even stares at them, never says a word to them. And then everyone else is getting ready to pack up and leave. And I did my usual look both ways and then take one of the players' box lunches for myself because I'm addicted to food. And so I'm sitting there eating my Chick-fil-A, lukewarm Chick-fil-A, which is always the best kind of Chick-fil-A. And they're ready to head out of there. They got to head back to the airport and fly back to Tuscaloosa. Keep in mind the stories. Kiffin's already missed 2 buses in the past year. Lane is about to miss the bus again. And I think it's not important who it was. One of the football operations guys there is yelling at Lane Kiffin again. He's used to it by now. And he's yelling at him. And Kiffin's still on the phone. I mean, he's got 2 phones in his hand. And so he yells at him, do not take a shower or we're leaving you. So Kiffin says, okay, let me just go get my stuff. Kiffin went in the locker room and took a shower. I can't even tell you whether the buses left him that night or not. But I will say this. Remember how this unfolded? How crazy is this? If you were to have kind of taken a time out from college football, and the last you remember, Lane Kiffin was the head coach at USC, okay? And then you just check out. What if you came back to find out not only was he fired on a tarmac, and then he had to rehab his image under Nick Saban, of all people, one of the most risk-averse head coaches in America, hired Lane Kiffin as his offensive coordinator. It worked. They won back-to-back SEC titles. They won a national title. They were in 2 more college football playoffs. And then the week before the national championship game, to tell you how married Nick Saban is to process over results, he fired him. He fired his offensive coordinator with about 10 days to go until the national championship game. How wild is that? Who else would do that? Everyone talks about the kind of stones you have to make a quarterback change at halftime. That wasn't even the craziest thing Nick Saban had done in the past calendar year in national championship situations. The dude fired his own coordinator 10 days before the national title. It may have been closer than that. So the Lane Kiffin at Alabama story could be like a 7-part docuseries. If they would ever grant Netflix access, if they could ever grant 30 for 30 full access, I cannot stress to you in strong enough terms the numbers that would do and the viewership that would do. The Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls story from '98, that was great. I don't know what kind of dance we would be talking about with Lane Kiffin, maybe a little bit different than the last one, although it probably would start with an L. It would be fascinating theater. I will just tell you that. So that was really fun to witness. You never know what you're going to see when you are just standing outside a locker room.